The automatic doors of Detroit Mercy Hospital slid open, and the cold air hit me like a physical slap. It was January, the kind of gray, biting winter that settles into your bones and refuses to leave. I adjusted my grip on the small plastic bag containing my toothbrush, a comb, and the discharge papers. My hips still throbbed, a dull, rhythmic reminder of the surgery that had kept me flat on my back for 3 weeks. 79 years old, and they send you out into the snow with a pat on the back and a prescription for painkillers that cost more than my monthly food budget. I didn't call my son, David. He was a busy man, or so he always said. Big deals, Pop, big deals. I didn't want to be a burden. That was the code I lived by. Never complain, never beg. I hailed a taxi, wincing as I climbed into the back seat. The leather was cracked and smelled of stale cigarette smoke, but it felt like a luxury chariot compared to that hospital bed. "Where to, old-timer?" the driver asked, eyeing me in the rearview mirror. 1408 Oakwood Drive, I said, the address rolling off my tongue like a prayer. It was the only place that mattered, the house where I raised David, where I'd held my wife, Martha, as she took her last breath, where I'd built the back deck with my own 2 hands, plank by plank. I just wanted to sit in my recliner, turn up the heat, and look at Martha's picture on the mantel. The ride was slow. The city looked tired, covered in dirty slush. When we finally pulled up to the curb, my heart gave a little jump of joy, followed immediately by a confused stutter. There was a car in the driveway, a blue sedan I didn't recognize. "You expecting company?" the driver asked, eyeing me in the rearview mirror. "No," I mumbled, paying him with trembling hands. Must be David, checking on the place. I walked up the path, the snow crunching under my orthopedic shoes. The pain in my hip flared, but I pushed it down. I reached into my pocket for my keys, my fingers brushing against the cold brass. I slid the key into the deadbolt, ready for the familiar click. It didn't turn. I frowned, jiggling it. I pulled it out, wiped it on my coat, and tried again. Nothing. It wouldn't even go all the way in. I knocked, confused. "David, it's Dad." The door flew open, but it wasn't David. A stranger stood there, a man in his 30s, wearing a tank top and holding a half-eaten sandwich. He looked at me with aggressive confusion. "Can I help you?" he barked. I live here," I stammered, pointing to the number on the siding. "I'm Raymond Carter. My key won't work." The man laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "You don't live here, pal. I bought this place 10 days ago. Get off my porch before I call the cops." He slammed the door in my face, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the quiet street. I stood there, staring at the wood grain of the door I had painted red just last summer. The shock was a cold fluid filling my lungs, making it hard to breathe. Bought? 10 days ago? I was in the ICU 10 days ago. I raised my hand to knock again, my fist trembling, but before I could make contact, the door jerked open again. The man was back, and this time he was holding a baseball bat. "I told you to beat it, old man," he shouted, stepping out onto the porch. "You're trespassing." "There must be a mistake," I said, my voice cracking. I hated how weak I sounded. I was a foreman at the plant for 30 years. I commanded respect. Now I was shivering on my own porch, being threatened like a stray dog. "My son, David Carter, he has the spare key. Please, just let me check the phone." "I don't know no David," the man sneered, gripping the bat tighter. "I bought this house from a Carter estate. That means the owner is dead, Pops. You a ghost?" "Dead?" The word hung in the freezing air. I stumbled back, my heel catching on the edge of the stair. I gripped the railing to keep from falling, the pain in my hip blinding me for a second. A police cruiser turned the corner, lights flashing but no siren. The neighbor, Mrs. Higgins, must have called them. She was peeking through her curtains across the street. Thank God, the police would sort this out. They would see my ID, they would kick this intruder out. 2 officers stepped out of the vehicle, hands resting near their belts. They walked up the driveway with that slow, deliberate pace that always made my stomach turn. "What seems to be the problem here?" the taller officer asked, looking from the man with the bat to me. "This guy's trying to break in," the homeowner yelled, playing the victim perfectly. "Says he lives here. I got the deed right inside." "Sir," the officer turned to me, his voice condescendingly gentle, the way you talk to a child or a senile invalid. "Do you have identification?" I fumbled for my wallet. My fingers were numb from the cold. I handed him my driver's license. "I am Raymond Carter. This is my house. I've lived here for 42 years. I was in the hospital. I just got out." The officer looked at the ID, then at the house. The homeowner disappeared inside and came back waving a piece of paper. "Here, look, signed deed. Raymond Carter transferred ownership to David Carter, who sold it to me. Closed the deal on the 18th. The officer looked at the paper, then back at me. His eyes lost the suspicion and filled with pity. That was worse. Pity meant I was finished. "Mr. Carter," the officer said softly, "according to this, you don't own this home anymore. It looks like your son sold it. You need to leave the property, or we'll have to escort you." "Sold it?" I whispered. "But I'm not dead." "You need to go, sir. Is there a shelter we can take you to?" A shelter? The word tasted like ash in my mouth. I had worked since I was 14 years old. I had paid my taxes. I had never taken a dime of charity in my life. And now, standing on the sidewalk of the street where I taught my son to ride a bike, a police officer was offering to drive me to a homeless shelter. "No," I said, straightening my back, as much as the pain would allow. "No shelter. Take me to the Motel 6 on the highway." I had $300 in cash in my wallet, my emergency fund I kept hidden in my sock drawer at the hospital. It was all I had left. The ride in the back of the police car was a different kind of humiliation. The hard plastic seat, the cage between me and the officers, it made me feel like a criminal. I stared out the window, watching the familiar neighborhood blur by. The bakery, the post office, the park. It was all gone, stolen. We pulled up to the motel. It was a run-down place with flickering neon lights and rust stains on the stucco. I paid for a week up front, the clerk looking at me with dead eyes. My room was on the ground floor. It smelled of mildew and stale beer. I sat on the edge of the bed, the mattress sagging under my weight. I didn't take off my coat. I was too cold, a chill that came from the inside out. I pulled out my cell phone. My hands were shaking so badly I could hardly dial. I pressed 1 for speed dial. David. It rang, and rang, and rang. "Hey, this is Dave. Leave a message." "David." My voice was a rasp. "It's your father. I'm at a motel. There are strangers in the house. The police said you sold it. David, tell me it's a mistake. Please, son. All my things. Your mother's things. Call me." I hung up and let the phone drop to the bedspread. I closed my eyes and tried to think. How? How could he do this? Then I remembered. The hospital. 3 days after my surgery, I was groggy, drifting in and out of consciousness on heavy morphine. David had come to visit. He was smiling, holding a clipboard. "Just insurance papers, Pop," he had said, his voice smooth. "Need your signature so they don't cut off your coverage. You don't want to lose the house to medical bills, do you?" I had trusted him. He was my boy. I had signed with a shaky hand, grateful he was taking care of things. I wasn't signing insurance papers. I was signing a power of attorney. I was signing away my life. I looked around the dingy motel room. No photos of Martha, no clean clothes, no food, just me and the hum of the vending machine outside. I curled up on top of the covers, clutching my phone like a lifeline, waiting for it to ring. 3 days passed. The phone didn't ring. I rationed my money. I walked to the gas station across the highway to buy a loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter. I ate it with a plastic spoon I washed in the bathroom sink. The indignity of it burned my throat. I was Raymond Carter. I had built engines that powered America. Now, I was eating peanut butter in the dark to save electricity, terrified my $300 would run out before I got answers. On the 4th day, I couldn't take the silence anymore. I took a bus to David's apartment complex on the other side of the city. It was a fancy place, the Lofts at Rivertown. Brick walls, high ceilings, young people with expensive dogs. I waited in the lobby. The doorman tried to make me leave, eyeing my wrinkled clothes and unshaven face, but I planted my feet. "I am waiting for my son," I said, my voice like iron. 2 hours later, David walked in. He was wearing a new leather jacket and laughing into a sleek new phone. He looked rich. He looked happy. When he saw me, he didn't look guilty. He looked annoyed. He hung up the phone and walked over, grabbing my arm and pulling me into a corner, away from the elevators. "Dad, what the hell are you doing here?" he hissed. "You can't just show up like this." "You sold my house," I said. It wasn't a question. I looked him in the eye, searching for the boy who used to cry when he scraped his knee. I found only a stranger with cold, calculating eyes. "I handled your assets," David corrected, releasing my arm as if touching me disgusted him. "Look at you, Dad. You're old. You had a stroke. You can't live in that big house alone. It's irresponsible." "It was my home," I said, my voice rising. "Everything I had was in there. Martha's records, my tools. Where is it? Where's the money?" David rolled his eyes. "It's in a trust, Dad, for your care. I'm looking at nursing homes, good ones. I did this for you. You were going to lose it anyway." "A nursing home?" I stepped back. "I don't need a nursing home. I need my house. You tricked me while I was drugged." "Keep your voice down," David snapped, looking around to see if his neighbors were watching. "You signed the papers. Legally, I'm in charge. Now go back to whatever hole you crawled out of, and I'll have someone call you when we find a facility. Don't come here again or I'll have security ban you." He turned his back on me. He actually turned his back and walked toward the elevators. "David!" I called out, my voice breaking. "I'm your father!" The elevator doors closed on his back without him looking at me once. I stood in the lobby, surrounded by marble and glass, feeling smaller than I ever had in my life. I walked out of that building feeling like a ghost. The wind had picked up, cutting through my thin coat, but I hardly felt it. The cold inside me was deeper. My own son. He looked at me and saw nothing but a nuisance, a liability, a paycheck. I took the bus back to the motel, but I didn't go to my room. I went to the diner next door. I ordered a black coffee and sat there for 3 hours just to stay warm. I watched the steam rise from the cup and thought about giving up. It would be so easy. Just stop fighting, let the system swallow me, go to the nursing home, stare at a wall, and wait to die. But then I thought about Martha. I thought about how she looked at me when I finished the deck. "You're a strong man, Ray. You build things to last." I wasn't built to crumble. Not like this. Not for a lie. I reached into my wallet and pulled out a crinkled business card. It was old, yellowed at the edges. Sowerby and Sons, Legal Aid. Frank Sowerby was a union rep back in the day, a man who argued with management until his face turned purple. He had a son who went to law school. It was a long shot, a desperate shot. The next morning, I shaved with a disposable razor, put on my only clean shirt, and took the bus downtown. The office was small, cluttered with files stacked to the ceiling. Frank had passed 5 years ago, the receptionist told me, but Marcus was there. Marcus was younger than David, with messy hair and a tie that was too loose. He listened to me for 20 minutes without interrupting. He didn't look at his phone, he didn't look at his watch, he just looked at me. "Let me get this straight," Marcus said, leaning forward. had you sign a power of attorney while you were on post-op morphine, and then he used it to liquidate your primary asset within 10 days? Yes, I said. He says it's for my own good. He says the money is in a trust. Marcus tapped his pen on the desk. Mr. Carter, if the money was in a trust for your care, you wouldn't be living in a Motel 6 eating peanut butter while he wears a new leather jacket. That's not fiduciary duty. That's theft. Can we get the house back? I asked, hope fluttering in my chest like a trapped bird. Marcus sighed, rubbing his temples. It's hard. If the buyers were innocent third parties, but the power of attorney, if we can prove you weren't of sound mind. He stood up. I need to see those medical records, and I need to see the deed transfer. This smells, Raymond. It smells bad. For the first time in weeks, someone called me by my name. Not Pop, not old-timer, not Sir. Raymond. I have nothing to pay you, I said quietly. Marcus looked at the photo of his father on the wall, old Frank Sowerby, fist in the air. He looked back at me. My dad used to talk about you, said you were the only foreman who never crossed a picket line. We'll worry about payment later. Let's go get those records. We spent the next 2 days running around the city, the hospital records department, the county clerk's office. I was exhausted, my hips screaming with every step, but I kept up with Marcus. I had to. The clerk's office was where the knife twisted deeper. We pulled the deed transfer. I saw my signature, a shaky scrawl that looked nothing like the firm hand I had used all my life. And I saw the date, January 18th, 2 p.m. Wait, I pointed a trembling finger at the document. The notary stamp says the signature was witnessed on January 18th at 2 p.m. Marcus looked at the medical file we had just retrieved. He flipped the pages rapidly. January 18th, 2 p.m. Raymond, look at this. He turned the chart toward me. 13:45. Patient administered 10 milligrams morphine IV. Patient somnolent, non-responsive to verbal cues. You were out cold, Marcus whispered, a hard edge enter his voice. You couldn't have signed this in front of a notary, which means the notary wasn't there, or they forged it. Did David bring the notary to the hospital? I asked, confused. No, David took the paper to a notary friend and got it stamped later. That's fraud, Raymond. That's a felony, and it invalidates the whole sale. We had him. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt sick. My son wasn't just greedy, he was a criminal. He looked at his unconscious father and saw nothing but an ATM machine. On the way back to the motel, I asked Marcus to drive by the house one more time. I needed to see it. We parked down the street. The new owner, the man with the bat, was outside. He was tearing up the backyard. I watched through the window as he took a shovel to the rose bushes. Martha's roses. She had planted them the year David was born. They were the only living thing left of her. I put my hand on the glass, tears finally spilling over. I hadn't cried when the doctor told me about the surgery. I hadn't cried when the police put me in the car. But watching those roses die broke something inside me. He's erasing us, Marcus. He's erasing everything, I whispered. Marcus gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. Not everything, Ray. Not you. We're going to the courthouse tomorrow. We're going to burn his little kingdom down.
The next morning, we filed an emergency injunction. Marcus was a whirlwind. He slapped a lis pendens on the property, a legal notice that basically froze the title, meaning the new owner couldn't sell it, refinance it, or do anything until the court case was settled. Then we went to the bank. With the proof of the fraudulent power of attorney, we got a court order to freeze David's accounts. Marcus sat me down in the courthouse cafeteria. Here's the timeline, Ray. The judge signed the freeze order an hour ago. David is going to find out any minute now, when he tries to use his card or when the bank calls him. What happens then? I asked, sipping lukewarm tea. Then he gets desperate, Marcus said, and desperate men make mistakes. We need to serve him the papers, personally. I'll do it, I said. Marcus hesitated. Ray, he's volatile. He's my son, I said, standing up. My cane hit the floor with a solid thud. I brought him into this world. I'll deliver the news that his party is over. We drove to the lofts again. This time, I didn't wait in the lobby. We went up to the 4th floor. I knocked on door 402. I heard laughter inside, music, clinking glasses. David opened the door, a glass of champagne in his hand. He was wearing a suit, looking ready for a night out. Behind him, I saw suitcases packed. He was leaving. He was going to run. His smile vanished when he saw me. "Dad, I told you." "You're going on a trip?" I asked, stepping into the doorway so he couldn't close it. "Vegas," he smirked, though he looked nervous. "Celebrating a business win. Look, I don't have time for this." "You're not going to Vegas, David," I said, pulling the thick envelope from my coat pocket. I slapped it against his chest. It hit him with a heavy, satisfying sound. "You're not going anywhere." "What is this?" He tore open the envelope. As he read, his face went pale, then red. The champagne glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. "Fraud?" David choked out. "You're suing me? I'm your son." "And I'm your father," I roared, a sound that came from 40 years of factory floors and union halls. "I'm the man who wiped your nose and paid for your college and bailed you out every time you screwed up. And you sold my home while I was in a coma?" David stepped back, crunching on the broken glass. "You don't understand, Dad. I owe people money. Bad people. If I don't pay them, they'll kill me." So that was it. Gambling debts. Sharks. "You should have come to me," I said, my voice dropping to a low rumble. "I would have sold the truck. I would have taken a loan. But you stole from me. You threw me in the garbage like a broken tool." "I can fix this," David stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. I still have some of the cash. I can pay them off partially. You just need to drop the lawsuit. Please, Dad, they'll break my legs." He was begging now. The arrogance was gone, replaced with a pathetic, weeping cowardice. It was pitiful. "I can't drop it," David said. "The district attorney picked it up an hour ago. It's out of my hands, David. It's the law now." David's eyes went wide. He lunged at me, grabbing my coat. "You have to stop him. Tell him you gave me permission. Tell him you remember signing it." Marcus stepped in then, pulling David off me with one swift motion. "Don't touch him. Step back." David slumped against the wall, sliding down until he hit the floor. He put his head in his hands and sobbed. Not tears of remorse, tears of a man who got caught. I looked down at him. I wanted to comfort him. It was a reflex, deep in my DNA. But then I saw the suitcases. He was going to leave me to rot in that motel while he drank champagne in Vegas. "You made your choice, son. Now you have to live in it."
The fallout was swift and brutal. Because the deed was transferred via fraud, the sale was voided. The man with the bat, Mr. Henderson, was furious. He had paid cash, and David had already spent $50,000 of it to pay off his sharks. Henderson sued David. The bank sued David. The state charged David with elder abuse, fraud, and forgery. I sat in the courtroom 3 weeks later. David was in an orange jumpsuit. He looked small. When the judge read the charges, David looked back at me. He mouthed the word, "Help." I gripped my cane. My heart was breaking, shattering into a million pieces. No father wants to see his child in chains, but I sat still. I kept my face like stone. I had to possess the dignity he had tried to strip from me. The judge looked at me. "Mr. Carter, would you like to make a victim impact statement?" I stood up slowly. The courtroom went silent. "Your Honor," I said, my voice clear, "I taught my son that a man is only as good as his word. I taught him that family is sacred. I failed. Somewhere along the way, I failed him. But he failed me too. He took my safety. He took my memories. He took my home and sold it to strangers. I love my son, but I cannot save him from the truth." I sat down. David put his head on the table. The judge sentenced him to 5 years in state prison. As they led him away, he didn't look at me again. The heavy wooden doors closed, and I was alone. Marcus drove me back to 1408 Oakwood Drive. The list pendants had done its work. The Hendersons were gone, their money returned by the bank's insurance mostly. The house was empty. I walked up the driveway. The snow was melting, revealing the patches of dead grass. I walked to the backyard. The rose bushes were gone, just holes in the dark earth where they used to be. The deck I built was scratched up, probably from the Hendersons moving furniture. I unlocked the front door. My key worked this time. The house was cold. It smelled different, like strangers. The Hendersons had painted the living room a bright, ugly yellow. My recliner was gone. Martha's photos were gone, likely in a landfill somewhere. I walked through the empty rooms, the sound of my cane echoing on the hardwood. I had won. I had my house back. Justice had been served. But as I stood in the center of the living room, listening to the silence, I realized what I had lost. I had lost my son. I had lost the peace of my final years. I went to the kitchen. On the counter, there was a single item left behind, a coffee mug that said #1 Grandpa. It wasn't mine. It belonged to the Hendersons. They had a life here, for a week. They were victims in this too, caught in David's storm. I sat down on the floor, my back against the cabinets. I was home, but it wasn't a home anymore. It was just a house, a pile of bricks and wood. I closed my eyes and imagined Martha was in the next room humming. I imagined David was 7 years old, running through the back door with muddy boots. I held on to those ghosts tight, because they were all I had left. I am Raymond Carter. I am 79 years old. I have my dignity, I have my roof, and I am the loneliest man in the world. Like this story? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more emotional dramas.